So hello everybody, and welcome to Miskatonic University Radio, a podcast and live stream exploring fantasy flight games as Arkham Horror the card game. I'm Dane.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Ben.
And today we're on chapter 3 of 5 of the epic journey through the player cards of Edge of the Earth. We're specifically today checking out the Seeker, Neutral, and Basic weaknesses.
There's a lot of cards, folks.
There sure are, but we're getting them out as fast as we can, and also trying to switch it up in the middle and make it a little interesting for some folks who may not want 5 episodes worth of live player cards in a row.
Oh, are you talking about our breakdown of Arkham last week's totally. Episode? Last week it was actually came out like 2 days ago.
Yeah.
It's because we talked about Piata for half an hour. You guys shouldn't let me ramble that long, so.
Or we should have let you ramble longer.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. Well, because there are so many cards, let's start talking about them. So the first one is we've seen this, there's kind of a cycle of new permanents that affect deck building in some way, and there's like one for each class, right? Plus like a neutral one. So the Seeker one of these is called Forced Learning, and it's a level 0 no cost asset. It's a talent and a ritual, and it says permanent, limit 1 per deck, purchase at deck creation, increase your deck size by 15. Wow. During each upkeep phase, instead of drawing 1 card, draw 2 cards and discard one of them.
I love that you were the one to read this one.
Do you guys ever think about how like messed up that would be? Like forced learning, like someone points a gun at your head and they're like, "You have to learn this." Like, that's creepy as hell. That's scary.
Yeah.
Well, so far I know the main use of this is so that you can have an even bigger Mandy deck. I know that's the main use people have been putting in, at least on Arkham DB.
Of course, yeah, of course.
Yeah. Shout out to the 94 card Mandy deck that's out there right now on the front page. That's got a lot of F-bombs in it, and that's the only reason why I liked it, started, favorited it, shared it on Instagram and Google and whatever.
It's too many cards.
Dane thinks that 90 should be the minimum deck size for Mandy, just in general, which I happen to disagree with. So that aside, though, are you guys excited to play Forced Learning decks?
Well, like the reason we say we want less cards in a deck is for consistency, right? And this increases your deck size, but you still get to draw. You kind of doubles your draw if you're not doing any other type of drawing at all. So theoretically, it should make your deck more consistent, right?
Yeah. So this is like kind of. It's weird because it's like going in the opposite direction of what's the green one? Underworld Contacts.
Yeah.
And but this is like multiplied by 3. This is like a lot of this is a lot of more cards, and like theoretically it's taking you through your deck twice as fast if you're considering that like fast is 1 card a turn, right? And that's not the case. You generally need to draw more cards with other through other ways to get the cards that you need. So like,
especially if you happen to be a Seeker.
Yeah, and you don't even want to discard them all, right? Like, of course, there's always the argument, well, you can just take the one that's good, but like when all of your cards are good.
Well, no, but that's the thing. Like, draw 2, discard 1 is always better than draw 1, right? Like, literally always.
Yeah,
sure,
sure. Unless you're worried about like running out of horror and running out of cards and dying to horror or something. But so that part's cool. The way I think about it is like, suppose you don't have this card. Your deck is like 33 cards. You start with 5 in hand. After 10 turns, you've drawn 10 additional cards. So you have like 15 cards. So you've seen, 15 out of 33 cards. Right. If you have this, then your deck size is like 48. And after 10 turns, you've seen like 25 out of 48. So like, you're not really, the ratio is like about the same. Like it's not, and that's assuming kind of like best case scenario for this card, which is that your draw has been doubled because your draw is entirely upkeep. If you're drawing other cards off of other things, which you probably are if you're a Seeker, then this is kind of, it's really not even doing that. So I like the idea of this, and I wouldn't be shocked if there's like some deck that it's good in, especially if you're playing it in maybe like a min deck that's playing a bunch of survivor cards that like want to go in the discard pile. Yeah. But I think that you probably shouldn't play this just thinking like, oh, this will make me find my whatever faster, because it probably won't.
Yeah, this is kind of like, so I made a deck kind of in theory. I made a lot of decks recently, Dan, but
We're aware,
in
Dane.
theory, I made a deck that was called Min Max because I'm obsessed with Netrunner crossovers,
Right.
and so it has both this permanent and the red permanent in it.
Mhm.
So when you start the game, you've got 45 cards in your deck, and everybody's saying, "Wow, that's bad, Dane." But you have short supply as well, so that discards 10 cards like after you draw your opening hand, etc. So you really only like theoretically the first pass through have a 35 card deck, and some of that's in the discard pile, so you can get like your uh, fortuitous discoveries, you can get your winging it's in there, etc. You can get your anything like items if you're going to be playing scavenging. There's that new Professor William Webb who can pull items back from the bin. There's like a lot of stuff there that can happen that's kind of interesting. Um, but whether it's worth it, I haven't actually played it yet. It feels like maybe a no. Maybe there needs to be a few more cards that are printed that can like work from the bin. But I don't know. At least it'll probably be fun.
There you go.
Right?
I mean, it does also give you an extra like draw trigger. Like if you're playing the Ancient Stone or something like that, maybe it would be. I still don't think it would be worth it, but like if you're playing
Cryptic
Min anyway,
writings.
it would be a fun synergy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like I said,
It's definitely an interesting card. Like I kind of feel similar to most of these like class specific new deck building permanents, which is they're really interesting, and I like the fact that they exist. I don't know if I'm like rushing to Arkham DB to build a deck with this, but I'm kind of happy it's there.
yeah, totally.
I mean, for this, I was wondering, for not for Seekers, because Seekers have a million card draw. Is this better for off class Seekers or Dunwich 5 or something, so that they do get a little bit more natural draw? I mean, Dan's right that like initially it's about the same, but I think over more turns you're going to see more and more of your deck with this.
I mean, it's sort of like when I tried to do the math a minute ago. It's kind of those are maybe best case scenario because they do have really limited draw options. So if they're doubling the amount of cards they draw during upkeep, maybe that is kind of just doubling the amount of cards that they get to see. But at the end of the day, they're increasing their deck size by a lot, and then they're kind of drawing through it a little bit faster. So you got to take into account like how long the game's going to be and some other things. Basically, I don't know if this is worth one of your 5 off class slots unless you're doing like prismatic synergy Zoe or something and you're like trying to have a permanent of each class so that you can play whatever that kind of junk. Ben is making an excited noise. But I think that would infringe on your plan to always play a bunch of stabby things in Zoe.
It would. It does take up the off class stabby slots. But you could get Force Learning, when you could also get Underworld support, and then you'd have 10 extra cards in your deck. There?
How many?
Oh wait,
there aren't even that many. You could get
the rabbit hole card too.
You could literally get all 5 of them.
Is there enough cards to upgrade that are like mostly Guardian cards that you could use through the rabbit hole?
Yeah, there are.
Let's set this aside for when we do an episode like top 10 dumbest decks ever or something like that. In the meantime, maybe we should move on to the second card.
Yeah. So the second card we've got here is maybe a familiar face. We've got Netrunner World Champion / Warhammer Invasion World Champion / Call of Cthulhu World Champion / like name a card game and he's the world champion of it. Jeremy Zwern. I guess his name is Jeremiah Kirby in this game, but we all know
the man in the black hat, because he always wears a black hat.
He does.
Yeah, that's his thing, right?
He does always have a black hat.
Arctic archaeologist. So we actually helped spoil this, right? So thanks to everybody who was there for our cool spoiler stream. But yeah, so
which was not Dan. Dan, what were you doing? Getting a burrito, biking up a mountain.
That is usually what I'm doing.
Yeah, comrade, it's all about the Zwerns here.
Yeah, it has rare Jeremys. Post them in the chat, please. We need some rare Jeremys.
Totally. So we got Jeremiah Kirby. He's a unique ally, Arctic archaeologist. He level 0 and costs 4 to play. Commits for 1 intellect. Is an ally, Miskatonic, and Wayfarer. You get +1 int. Seems great. And its triggered ability or reaction. After Jeremiah Kirby enters play, choose even or odd, and then reveal the top 5 cards of your deck. Draw each card with a cost that matches the chosen option. Shuffle the remaining cards back into your deck. He's got 2 health, 1 sanity, and he takes up your ally slot. So potential to draw a lot of cards with this.
Dane,
Yeah, I
can
think
you say Arctic archaeologist 5 times fast?
That sounds like something I don't want to try to say. So
No, you're just gonna give up. You're just gonna disappoint our fans in the chat.
So I think we've talked about this card at least twice already on the podcast. Dan talked about it a little bit in the last episode, right? Because you played it in your Mandy deck.
It's good, folks.
yeah, I mean that's a good point, Dan. You've played with it with Trish, right? Too, and so far you've gotten some pretty good hits with it.
Yeah, I did not end up playing it in the Mandy deck, but I have played it in the Trish deck that I'm playing with in Return to the Circle Undone with Dane, and I've made a couple of Monterey Jack decks that I haven't actually played yet that are similar to that Trish deck, and I think it's pretty excellent in those. I mean, like it's definitely competing against Dr. Milan Christopher, which is another great ally that kind of fits in the same slot because it has the same cost, gives you +1 intellect, and it gives you some kind of nice rider on top of that, right? Like Milan basically gives you a resource every turn, and Jeremiah, if you're willing to kind of build your deck around him, can probably draw you like 4 or 5 cards, which both of those things are great, and you kind of have to decide maybe based on what your specific deck needs and based on how much of a burden it is to build your deck around odds or evens. But I think, I mean, it's definitely a good card. It's definitely like competitive with Dr. Milan.
Yeah, totally. The in boost, like if that wasn't there, he might be one of those allies.
It wouldn't
like
really be
student or something like that. That you
it
kind of
wouldn't
play
really be
role.
not for 4 resources. It wouldn't. Maybe if it was like 2 cost or something, maybe. But
Sure. But like this has kind of like everything you want. It even has like the health for those who's it's relevant for, right? Daisy, for example, is somebody who has 5 health, and that is pretty relevant for her to take inherent damage. But regularly, if you build your deck around this is going to get you like 4 or 5 cards pretty consistently. Yeah. And like it just happens that there's like a weird amount of excellent green and yellow cards that are evens. I haven't tried the odds yet, and I know that there are some that are good there, but
I think evens is way better, and the reason is 0 is the best number that you want to see in the upper left corner of a card, right? And like you really are biased towards trying to play cards that have a big round circle up there. And as long as like if you're trying to go for all odds, like all of your cards cost at least 1, that's kind of scary, right? And it just so happens that a lot of the good seeker cards, like upgraded magnifying glass, Jeremiah himself, there's a lot of good even seeker cards, and I've been playing it in these kind of seeker rogue decks like Trish and Monty and Finn could do it also, because there's also a lot of good even rogue cards. There's the service events, there's cigarette case, obviously. So I think evens is like more likely to be good for this than odds. It also, keep in mind that skills don't have a cost, right? So skills, it's not that they cost 0, they don't have a cost. So you really don't want to play skills. If you're going to play a deck that's really reliant on skills, like with practice makes perfect and perception and deduction and stuff, that's maybe not the deck you want to play Jeremy in. But a deck where you can like afford to play like 0 or 2 cost events that have good icons instead of skills, like you play like working a hunch instead of perception or something like that, then it becomes really good. But basically, I mean, if you can get, I don't know exactly what number you like have to be at before this becomes like an awesome card, but if you can be at like 25, 26 even costed cards, and then like a couple of skills and like maybe a couple, like I have like Lone Wolf in the Trish deck as like pretty much the only odd costed card. If you can get to like 25 or 26, then I think you're in really good shape, and this is like pretty great. Especially keep in mind he's gonna die. You can replay him. You can maybe calling in favors or something like that. Although I believe that has an odd cost. So there's ways to you're hopefully gonna play like 2 or 3 Jeremys over the course of the game.
Yeah, totally. I also think that like it's kind of a like the cherry on top is that like Trish has an even costed signature card. I think Monterey Jack's is too for whatever reason, and Finn also his tiny gun and his event that he can search up there. So it's like even more consistency with this. And what's funny is that I'm realizing is that there are some weaknesses somebody in chat mentioned that do have costs, like the tower. The tower has a 4 cost, so technically Jeremiah would force you to draw it. Not that that's like bad or anything, because you're probably still drawing 4 other cards with it. But hey, it can happen sometimes.
Yeah, you're getting it out of your deck at least.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely it's just a pretty solid card, and you might upgrade out of it because like look, there are there are some, at some point it kind of becomes untenable. Like I'm giving up too many good odd costed cards just as a price to play this, maybe. So like in that Monterey Jack, in that Trish deck, like I might eventually basically replace him with Lola Santiago because she's odd costed and you start putting in like good skills and things. But at least like initially it's just a pretty solid card.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
I mean, I like it because it does encourage this kind of weird deck building that you have to kind of think a bit more to like make work, which is great for Seeker, because Seeker already has a million really good cards to think about. So it's like, oh man, can I cut out half of the very good cards and still be incredible? The answer is yes.
Right. I think if you're playing like a totally normal deck, like if you just have maybe like eight or nine skills and things with no cost, like 12 even cards and like 9 odd cards, at that point it's like kind of hard to make an argument for this over Dr. Milan, just because Dr. Milan is like, I mean, unless you really don't need money at all. But yeah, if you can really kind of like weight your deck towards evens or maybe even odds, although I think that's less good, then it's pretty good.
Yeah, totally. I agree. I think this card is super, super good. I think the only nombo that I can see with it is level 0 magnifying glass, which is generally in every secret deck, right? So like that gives you an excuse to upgrade it to level 0 or 1, or just take like Hawkeye folding cameras, which are a little worse, but I love them.
Well, that's the real curse of Jeremy Zorin. The Jeremiah Cursby of this card is that this card made me doubt my own deeply held beliefs to the point where I actually put Hawkeye folding camera in the level 0 Trish deck instead of magnifying glass, which is completely wrong because magnifying glass is like the best card in the game and Hawkeye folding camera is pretty bad. But I looked at that little 2 up there, that even number, and I said, oh, I gotta give this a shot. And I mean, it wasn't terrible or anything, but I definitely wished that I had magnifying glass instead. So that's the Jeremy's a trickster. Sometimes you gotta look at it and be like, I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to get me to not play magnifying glass. I'm still gonna play magnifying glass. You gotta be able to do it.
Yeah, Comrade in chat knows camera's great. But anyway, let's move on to the next one.
All right, let's move on. So up next we have Ridden in the Stars.
Space Dog.
It is a space dog. It's a level 0, cost 1 event. Seeker, of course, with 1 wild icon. It's an insight because it's, of course, a Seeker event. Fast, play only during your turn. Discard the top card of your deck. If that card is a weakness, shuffle it back into your deck. Otherwise, for the remainder of your turn, while that card is in your discard pile, commit it to each eligible skill test you perform. And it's got a Adam S. Doyle space dog art psychedelic going on, which is pretty cool.
That's so great. This is gonna join the ranks of like Pocket Sand and all the other cards that I'd never remember the name of actually, just for the art.
It's gonna join the ranks of Barf from Spaceballs as a famous space dog.
I still don't know what Pocket Sand is, Dane. You say it every week.
I will not forget the name of this card because I tried to play 1 copy of this in the Gloria deck in our take 1 of our Return to the Circle Undone run, and it never worked. And it really was. I mean, you can't totally blame this card for the fact that we both died in that run, but I kind of unfairly do blame this card at least. This is like, it's just very tempting because like, look, I played Amanda a couple of times. When you can like commit a level 2 perception 3 times in a turn, it's very, very good, right? Like you really, if you can kind of get that kind of value off of a skill card, it feels great. So you see this and you're like, oh man, I could like be Amanda for a turn basically when I'm playing a worse investigator, right? But it's just, I mean, maybe like Norman, like if you're already like always looking at the top of your deck, I think there's maybe an argument to try to do this. If you also have great skill cards that you're going to be able to like use 3 times in a turn, but you got to be careful. This is just it's a lot of moving parts. It's like really hard to actually pull this off.
Yeah, I think you have to be someone that can easily manipulate the top of their deck, like with no cost. So Norman, this would be very
even
good
more
for.
Easily than Gloria. So basically just Norman.
Well,
it's literally just Norman, yeah.
But Gloria has to use some of her precious cards that she would use during like the encounter deck to manipulate her own deck. Well, Norman gets it for free. So
what I was kind of hoping was that Gloria would have enough different things that could look at the top of a deck that on some turns I could be like use scrying on the encounter deck, and then I would still have like a listogram to look or something like, you know, that was the plan. It never worked out that way.
Yeah, this is a
I think
pure Norman card.
yeah, I think it's basically Norman or bust for this one.
It is, yeah, because like Norman also his new signature card helps with this, right? Because if you have deduction in your hand and you have your signature, you can just pull it from your hand, throw it on the top of your deck, use Written in the Stars. It's just there's more of a use case for it than you think, you know, and you could even like do crazy things with the what's the grimoire that you had for Gloria for a hot second? It was like a purple grimoire that like it's like
Astronomical Atlas, which is great. That card's awesome.
So you can like hypothetically use your signature to throw that card on top, put it under that book, commit it, and then put it back on top and do just crazy things with this and Written the Stars. And I think honestly that would be pretty fun and pretty powerful. But for anybody else, I feel
how would you do this simultaneously with the Astronomical Atlas? Because both of them pull something from the top of your deck, right?
I'm just saying that like you can use it with an Astronomical Atlas first. It goes back to your hand, then you can use it to Written in the Stars if you want to, or you can just continue using it.
But it's also good because like you're playing Norman, you could like, okay, I know the top of my deck is not something that I want to play Space Dog on. Use the Atlas to draw that or to put that under the Atlas, and then I have a new top deck, and then maybe this is something that I could play Space Dog on. It's also it also like it costs 1, which is like it's not that bad, but it's like, man, this doesn't really need to cost 1 considering
Norman.
You're right. That just makes it even more. That just makes it even more of a Norman card. Although you don't really want to play this off the top of your deck, so I don't know.
But like I'm guessing like if you wanted to do a Jeremy Zorn deck that's odds, it's probably because he's got wards, he's got like this, he's got there's magnifying glass level 0, which is totally fine. There's just a lot of cards that you could use for that.
It's a good point. If you are going to play Jeremiah Oddsby or whatever, it would be Norman is probably like the natural home for that.
Spells like
Mystic. Yeah, Mystic card. There are a lot of odd Mystic cards that like he could upgrade into. That could be cool.
There's some of them. Yeah. We should move on though, because I again it's interesting, and I tried it. I don't know how much play this is actually going to see.
I'll definitely use it in Norman, but let's move on to the next one.
Another card that we're definitely hitting a lot of cards that we've at least tried to make work, which is kind of exciting because it means we can offer some actual insights about them. So this is Hiking Boots. It's a Seeker asset. It costs 2 and it's level 1. It has an agility icon on it, and it says item, clothing, footwear. Limit 1 footwear per investigator. You get +1 agility. Reaction after the last clue is discovered from your location. Exhaust Hiking Boots. Move to a connecting location with at least 1 clue or to a connecting unrevealed location. Dane, do you want to talk about Hiking Boots since you're weirdly obsessed with this card?
Well, okay. Let's talk about the weird obsession for a second. I feel like if this card came out and it was still in Massachusetts or Connecticut, I wouldn't be as connected with this card.
Dane has a shoe thing. That's the weird obsession.
But because I'm now in Colorado and most of the population of Colorado just just hike and have hiking boots, this makes more sense. These boots were made for hiking. This card is like, I also love Ursula, and this card reinvigorated my love of Ursula. So this card is like, I mean, what other footwear do we have in the game? Track shoes. What's track shoes? A great card. This card is a great card. It gives you +1 agility, which is great for Ursula. Not many other Seekers, maybe, probably. But the important part is that Ursula can trigger her ability when this happens. And like also off-class people can use it too. Like Trish, for example, you took it in her in the thing. Monterey Jack can use it.
Finn could grab it, right?
No, Finn can only grab level 0.
Finn.
It's basically like actual Seekers plus Trish, I think is like and Monterey Jack, I guess.
Yeah, it's the free move is fantastic, obviously for Ursula, but it's also just kind of nice in the case action compression, etc. I wouldn't play more than 1 copy probably. It's just kind of like one of those cards that's like it's great if you get it, might not even be good if you get it, but if you get it early, you can play it and get some value out of it.
I do like this card, and I am playing it in that Trish deck, and it's been fairly good. It's even, so it fits in great into like the Trish, Monterey Jack, Jeremy decks, right? Totally. I think the only thing I would say about it is like even Track Shoes, it's a good card, but like you can't play it just because you want the extra movement. Yeah. Like you basically need to like already have good enough agility that you can probably pass the movement test. and also still kind of want more agility. So that kind of limits who can play it. This is almost kind of similar, where like you need to actually get a real benefit from having the agility, and probably more than just like playing lockpicks or something. And you also the movement is like less reliable than I kind of thought it would be, because of the condition that you can only move to a place that either is unrevealed or it still has clues on it. Like some scenarios that you can usually do that, other scenarios you just like only maybe get to trigger it once. So if you're paying 2 resources and a click and a card to put down a thing that's going to like maybe give you a free move once when you, not necessarily when you need it most, then it's in like you should have just played shortcut territory, right? So you really have to want the agility. But some people like in a hybrid Trish or Monterey Jack deck do want the agility to evade things. So it can be pretty good in those decks.
Yeah, I also think it just kind of came out at a great time, because Jeremiah Kirby obviously is fantastic for even costed cards, so it's like there's more of an incentive there. If this card
Shortcuts
costed,
also even.
Yeah, if this card costed 3, I wouldn't think it's as good as it is, I think.
Right,
But the fact that it costs 2 is fine. It's totally fine. So I like Hiking Boots a lot, and I'm looking forward to using it more.
And it go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as Dan. Basically, it's not a generically great card for every investigator, but I think for Ursula and Trish and Monterey, especially Monterey and Ursula, who like moving around to trigger their other abilities, it's helpful in that regard.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you actually are going to use your agility to evade things, or if you have the bow or something, and bonus if you want to like move a lot, like Ursula or Monterey Jack, then it's like probably a solid card, and you should probably play like 1 copy of it, or maybe 2 if you like have some kind of special reason for it. But if you're just like kind of an ordinary seeker that's going to spend most of your time investigating and you're not going to be evading, then I don't know about it.
Yeah, chat is suggesting using it in Carolyn to give her a little bit of extra movement compression. I guess as you get pick up clues.
I mean, give it a try maybe, and see how it goes. I worry that because of the restriction that it's only when the last clue is discovered, and then only when you can move to another location that is either unrevealed or has clues. Like when I first saw that, I was like, oh, that's probably going to be fine. Like most of the time, that's going to be okay. But in us playing it so far, like Dane, I think playing it in you played it in Machinations, right, as Ursula, I think. Yeah. And like I'm playing it in Trish.
And where they gods.
Like you get to use it sometimes, but often not when you really want to. And sometimes it's like, well, I get a free movement, but it's not to the place that I want to go. So that might be like a little bit more of a restriction than you at first think it is. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it stacks really well. Like if you have like a Lola for your Trish deck or something, if you have like Lola and Hiking Boots, that's a lot of agility. You're at like 6 agility. Your lockpicks are going to be better. There's a skill card that's coming up that we're going to be talking about that makes that better. Like just a lot of like neat interactions with this set specifically, but also with like mainly rogue off class dudes type folks.
It's also great with Crack the Case, which like every Seeker deck should be playing anyway. But because that makes you like want to like be there when the last clue is taken. So this
Same with Hawkeye Folding Camera.
Fair enough.
We're back there.
Let's move on. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So the next card we've got is Join the Caravan. This is a level 1 event. It costs 5 to play. Wow, that's really bad. It has 2 commit symbols. It's got one that's intellect and one that is agility. It's an insight and a synergy. Fast. Play only during your turn. Reduce the cost of this card by 1 for each different class among cards you control. And then just move to any revealed location. The true journey is the one that we take in our minds.
Whoa, dude.
Wow. Yeah, no. So like, I mean, this is what's funny about this is like elusive, right? Like I know elusive was no, it was revealed location, but as long as there's no enemies at it, I think. This is kind of like a better elusive, but like it's focused on how many cards that you have that are of different classes.
I'm just really glad that they're finally printing some cards to help Seekers move around the map faster, because
I also
really
fast,
feel like,
right?
yeah, I feel like Seekers really need more like good fast cards that let them teleport wherever they want. There's just hasn't been enough of that. So
they only have like Eon Chart, Pathfinder, Shortcut, the boots that we just talked about, like no other class.
Yeah.
I mean, this seems like it's good for Carolyn. We talked about her earlier, right? She probably has enough to reduce this down to 2 or 1. Just one per kit.
Yeah, I think that would be. This is the case where it's like this is a good way for Carolyn to move around. One thing I want to ask though, I believe that the cost of this, like, I think that Jeremy, when you're checking whether the cost is even or odd, it doesn't say printed cost; it just says cost. So, like, if you know that you're always only ever going to have seeker cards in play, or and neutral cards, and like your investigator card is a seeker, then this would make this cost 4 just always, and then I think Jeremy would draw it for you.
Interesting.
But the cost is applied when you play the card, I think, for this one.
But it doesn't
Like,
say.
it's not cost X. It says play it and reduce the cost of the card by 1. So I think the cost is. I think the base cost is still 5.
I mean, I'll defer to Ben as the rules master, but it doesn't say when you play it reduce the cost of it. It just like fast is like a property the card has. Play only during your turn is a restriction. Reduce the cost by 1 is, I don't know. It sounds like that could just always be active.
Even if it's in your deck and you haven't drawn it yet?
Like, why not?
Like events, when you play them, that's when their effect goes into applies usually. So like you play this card, and as part of playing it, you pay the cost, but you reduce the cost.
But it's fast before you play it. Like, fast is just a property that the card has even when it's in your hand and you're not currently playing it.
Well, fast means it doesn't cost an action to play.
But similarly, like, I don't know. I mean, I'll leave it up to Ben because this feels like a very weird corner case of the rules. But I would be interested in at least like hearing back what the like hive minds of rules people in the rules zone think about it.
I forgot to open up the giant list of rules people had about all these cards. It might be a question on there.
I know that there's one about like the X cost card. It's like the Flute of the Outer Gods or something like that with Jeremy or something. And like people were very confused about that. And this is kind of probably along those same lines. But yeah, I think to draw it to a different point, Midas in chat is saying that like Edge of the Earth might just be a huge map, just like Innsmouth, maybe even bigger. We don't know. So things like this might be even more helpful than like connecting locations, because I'm imagining like MJ's going to put things in that are like, you know, an avalanche hit this location. Every time you move through it, you have to take like 3 damage or something like that. So like teleporting that way might be more helpful in that regard. That being said, the only list that I have this kind of brainstormed in right now is a Carolyn deck, because Synergy feels like you have to make your entire deck around it or don't bother with it. You can't just kind of like go for a middle ground. Like, I'm not going to play this for 3, most likely. I'm probably not going to play this for 4. Like, I would play this for 2.
You know,
anything more than that.
The thing is, like, in Innsmouth or something, like, so we just did Innsmouth. If you listen to our most recent episode, we talked about like how broken the pendant was in a couple of those scenarios where like if you have a huge map and you just need to get from one end of it to the other end, teleporting is pretty good, right? I feel like upgrade into this in like Lost in Time and Space or something for like the last scenario. If you're a deck that's kind of rich, it's not the craziest thing in the world, right? Especially if you're like, because like Finn can take this, right? Because he can take like up to level 1.
No,
somebody can.
Gloria can take this.
Or like Tony, right? My point is there's people that like have access to a lot of money cards who could like maybe take one of these. If you're rich enough, paying like 4 to warp across the map might be pretty great. Fast.
That is true. Yeah.
Even Seeker decks, if you're blasting off a bunch of Crack the Cases, if you're drawing Cryptic Writings and playing it, if you're getting money off of a bunch of other stuff, I mean, again, if you're rich enough, like this is a pretty good way to spend money.
That is true. Yeah.
Mm.
And if you're like a Seeker with an auth class, if you're like Min and you're like, I'm going to play Drawing Thin, which also gives me money, and then I'm going to always have like yellow and red cards in play, and then maybe I'm also going to play like a multi-class card, so I have 3 in play. I mean, this is just very good. I think this is just pretty. Again, Shortcut's like one of the best cards in the game, and this is like similar to Shortcut, it just costs more.
Yeah.
So, seems good.
Yeah. I do like that this card exists, but yeah, Synergy. I guess big money and Synergy seems fine to play it in.
Yeah.
All right.
I also like the art a lot.
I wish it was a little more colorful, but I guess it's just kind of Antarctica. Also, I don't think this is Antarctica. There's way too many trees here.
There's also horses.
There's a large number of arts that are like seem like they're like North America.
I'm really interested. I'm really interested to see what is this like a fake out where like only the first scenario events of the Earth is Antarctica, and then we go to like northern Canada or something.
We go there and then we find probably a hole in the ground and we like trip into it by accident and we fall through the planet. Obviously,
no. Then we play it, join the caravan, and teleport to Greenland. And there.
Something like that. All right, let's move on to the next card, which is Survey the Area. It is a level 1 seeker skill. Practiced expert. While survey the areas in your hand or committed to a skill test, it gains intellect icons equal to your agility and agility icons equal to your intellect. So we've talked about a couple of similar cards like this already. I don't know. What do you guys think of this? It's intellect and agility combo, so that's kind of good for ones we've mentioned already, secrets we mentioned already that use agility.
Yeah, I played this in Ursula. It's really a ton of icons. So many icons.
It's like pretty obvious if you're the deck that should play this card or not, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're gonna be evading stuff and investigating, and if you have like say a 4 in both of those stats, if you're Ursula or Monterey Jack or Trish, then maybe you want to play one of these, and if not, don't play it. Play something else.
I mean, the thing about it is it's not even that terrible for like a 1 of or a 2 of for defensive stats. If you're in like hard mode and you're like Mandy, this is giving you 5 agility icons on a test that might do like 3 or 4 damage or something like that.
And it's not your base, so any static boosts mean
it's even like a practice card for practice makes perfect. Like that also is kind of ridiculous in its own way.
Yeah, I almost feel like I might rather bank the XP and get an Eye of Truth, maybe. But like, yeah, it's maybe worth thinking about, especially if you're Mandy in kind of like a suboptimal Forgotten Age group where it's like, oh, no one's good at evading stuff. Like, all right, I guess I'll play a couple of these. Something like that.
Yeah.
Or you could just play the pendant.
Well,
I like the direction that this cast was going before about 3 seconds ago. So thanks for that, Dan.
I mean, they're gonna taboo the pendant again, right? They got to realize that the
they already tried twice and it didn't really take. So I don't know if they're gonna.
Maybe they'll ban it. It's put it with. Is it a better card or worse card than Double or Nothing, Dan?
I gotta think about that.
Does it break the game more or less than Double or Nothing can?
I mean, with Double or Nothing, you could do 10 damage to something with a shotgun. Yeah. I mean, that's I don't know. That's Cthulhu's gonna be running away scared if he knows you can do 10 damage with a shotgun.
You can teleport and evade like every turn for the whole game automatically.
That is pretty good. I don't know. It's a tough one. Let's make a poll for our listeners to vote in at some time maybe. But anything else to say about Survey the Area, or should we?
I mean, I think that Ben, we might not want to go down this rabbit hole. I don't know how big it is, but like, there's a weird interaction with Amanda, right? And that she just can't play this card if it's under her.
Yeah, right. Because it's only when it's in your hand or committed to the skill test that you get icons, and when it's underneath Amanda, it does not have the icons, and you can't commit to the skill test if it has no icons on it.
Midas Stream in the chat is talking about that too. Isn't that also the case with? Didn't we see one of these earlier that was also practiced and it had this? We had a similar discussion.
Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of too bad, but like, there's plenty of other cards you can play in Amanda. You don't really need those.
Yeah, it's possible that's unintentional, but that's how it is right now. Definitely.
I don't know that Amanda needs it. I'm just gonna say that right now.
She's fine. My note on this was gonna be the Survivor one. I think is combat willpower. And I had that on my list for Daniela to put in because I was like, oh yeah, we're playing hard mode, and that's a giant boost to combat or willpower as a defensive stat and an offensive stat. And I just never thought to fit it into the deck. So I kind of feel like this might fall into that case. Like, it's not a high priority upgrade. You probably already have other cards that can boost your stats enough.
It's what I've been saying about like why the cantrip skills are really good, because they at least cycle and give you a new card. Like, it's just really hard to put a card in your deck that all it's going to do is help you pass one test where you have to commit it in advance, right? Like, you probably have slots for a couple of those, but they have to be really good. So you have to compare this against like Promise of Power if you can play that, Eye of Truth if you have enough XP for that. You have to compare this to like a lot of other, and it is good. Like, you definitely might end up playing this in the decks that we mentioned, but there's enough cool cards in the game now that you don't have a lot of slots for cards like this anymore.
Yeah, I think Survey the Areas definitely gets better, like most cards, I guess, because it gives such like a ridiculous amount of stats if you're specifically a Seeker or a Rogue or both. That Lucky Cigarette Case in your deck makes it extra like kind of argument for it because of the fact that it just gives you so many symbols when you're committing it to a test.
I mean, you played the Rogue one in Winnie, but that one just gives question marks, right?
Yeah.
So that was kind of good there.
That's also with Winnie, you're like, just give me all of the green skill cards because I need all of them, and there's not that many of them.
Literally anything with a question mark on it, I will throw at tests.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Opportunist, watch this, anything. Let's go for the next card though. So we have an upgrade to medical texts, which is from all the way back in the core set. So this is now it's called medical text. It's a 2-cost level 2 seeker asset. It's got an intellect icon and a combat icon. It is still an item in a tome, and it says action: choose an investigator at your location and test intellect 2. If you succeed, heal 1 damage from that investigator, 2 damage instead if you succeed by 2 or more. If you fail, either exhaust medical texts or deal 1 damage to that investigator, and it takes up a hand slot. So the differences from the original one are if you succeed by 2, you can heal 2 damage instead of 1. And if you fail, instead of dealing 1 damage to the investigator, you can instead choose to exhaust it, which it doesn't even say if it's not exhausted, but I guess that's just kind of a built-in thing where you can't activate exhausted things or something. Oh, no, I guess if you fail again, you would have to choose damage because you couldn't exhaust an already exhausted card.
Right. You could definitely still activate this if it was exhausted.
So like once per turn, you can fail without hurting somebody.
Yeah.
But if you fail a second time in the same turn, then you have to choose to do damage to them. I believe I have been killed by my good friend Colin with this card.
With the new one?
No, the original one several years ago.
I've definitely also had somebody, I think, get stabbed multiple times by medical texts.
It's always a possibility. Yeah, you don't. Yeah.
This is the sharpest of the books, actually.
So
the scariest one.
Healing is like, it's kind of tough usually to put a whole card that you have to like pay and spend money on, and then also spend actions to activate just to heal somebody, especially as a seeker where you personally are probably not taking that much damage. So it would be like, I have a Mark or a Daniela or something in my group, and I'm going to be able to get a lot of value from this. But if you're in that situation, the original medical text was not very exciting because spending an action to heal 1 is pretty bad. Spending an action to heal 2 and even being kind of safe if you like draw auto fail is definitely a lot better. So this is kind of cool, actually. Maybe, I don't know.
I think that it's good for the things that you know you're going to be taking damage in. Like, obviously, we just played through Innsmouth on hard mode, and honestly, that you take a lot of damage and horror from that just because you're like engaging with deep ones. They're getting, they get all that random auto damage in. The Chaos token sometimes will just randomly give you damage because you're holding a key. They'll just slap you upside the face. And like, not Circle and Done, Forgotten Age. Forgotten Age is another one that you just, arrows in the trees? Okay, well, at least I have medical texts, right?
Yeah, the thing you got to remember, though, is just that, remember that any damage that doesn't kill you is like you're just using a resource and it doesn't really cost you anything. Like, until you're dead, taking damage doesn't, it sounds like a tautology, but like, the healing
makes you stronger?
Like healing doesn't do any good unless you were going to die if you didn't heal yourself, right? Unless you're somebody like Mark or Daniela or other characters who can like choose to play more aggressively and take more damage to get value out of it. Or like Agnes with horror is kind of like this.
Parallel Agnes.
Yeah, parallel Agnes, sure. But if you're just like a normal character, like again, if you put healing cards in your deck and then you don't need them to stay alive, those cards basically did nothing for you.
Sure. I think that as far as like tomes go, Daisy's the one that I would play this in. And I would happily play this in a deck where if you're going through the Forgotten Age and your friends are Mark and or Parallel Agnes, and you've got some other incentive to play this, I think this is a really good card in that circumstance. But outside of that circumstance, I don't know. Like, there's so many other things that you could spend 2 XP on that would just be way more relevant than this.
Yeah, also, I'd play, if it was like a Daisy Mark duo, I'd probably play 1 copy of this. It'd be fun.
Yeah. Could also use it to troll Calvin and heal his damage, right?
Yeah, scratch that. Reason number 4, if you've got a Calvin in your deck, you can threaten him with your medical text.
I'm helping.
I've got a free action every turn to make your life miserable, Calvin.
I feel like Calvin would play. There must be like a 4 XP survivor card that just says like you fail the next test, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's so good. It makes your take heart work all the time." And Calvin would like commit that to you just to make sure that you fail and do a damage instead of healing him.
Yes. No, yeah, but
That's how survivors work, right? Like you spend like a bunch of XP and money to like intentionally fail a test so that you can commit take heart or something.
yeah. No, comment
Not
comments in
quite.
chat actually brings up another good point. We're going to be talking about the weaknesses in this set later. But if you also have one of those weaknesses that's really annoying and you're, just a seeker on like solo or something like that, or again, if you're playing through Forgotten Age and somebody has one of these weaknesses, that could also be a good reason because these new weaknesses are really kind of annoying. They vary, but some of them are just absolutely ridiculously annoying to deal with. So
Yeah.
Yeah, my main review of this card is I'll maybe play it in Daisy. Parallel Daisy like wants to have a bunch of tomes too as well, right? So maybe she wants to have one upgraded version in her deck. I'm also infuriated that the revised core set came out with new art for medical texts, and this does not have the new art for medical texts on it.
Ben, we talked about this. Breathe. It'll be all right.
I'm picturing Ben like in The Fugitive where they like find the house where Harrison Ford was staying, and on the desk they find like, oh, he was eating oranges and he was making a fake ID. There's like a razor blade and like parts of like an ID because he like cut and pasted his photo onto someone else's ID. I'm picturing Ben like hunched over a table, like surgically removing the art from an extra copy of the new core set and like carefully pasting it on here or something.
I wouldn't put it past him.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to the next card.
Well, the next card is another a welcome back here. We've got Unearth the Ancients again. Hello. It is a level 2. Sorry, the original was level 0. This is a level 2 Seeker event. Costs 0 to play now, as opposed to the original's 1. Has 2 intellect icons and an agility icon on it, as opposed to just 2 intellect icons. And the new one reads, investigate. Choose up to 2 Seeker assets in your hand. The difficulty of the skill test is equal to the combined cost of the chosen assets. If you succeed, put the chosen assets into play one at a time. For each relic asset you put into play by this ability, draw 1 card. So the difference being here with the effect is that you can choose 2 instead of 1, and the difficulty is the combined cost of the assets instead of just the singular asset cost. And if you succeed, you can put them into play one at a time. You can draw as many cards as the cards that you put in play, essentially, if they're relics. So, again, kind of hard to justify putting
there are
in your deck.
There are additional differences, right? It's free instead of costing 1. Also means it works.
Yes.
Also means it works with Jeremy, and not only that, you still get a clue even if you succeed, right? The other one is like you get to play the asset instead of getting a clue. This one,
I didn't notice that.
What's more, it completely overrides the shroud of the location,
Right.
right? So if the place has like 10 shroud for some reason and you pick 2 cheap assets, this might actually be an easier test than getting a clue. I don't know how often that's going to be relevant, but it's funny to think about.
I know. I was gonna say, well, like, what are the cheapest relics that you could play off of this? If you have like a Tooth of Esley, and then like, is there something that just costs like 1 or something, so that the test could actually be reasonable, and you draw 2 cards, get a clue, and put those things out fast?
Dane, there's a relic that I kind of like that I got to play recently over in Minnesota.
You're right. Crystallizer of Dreams.
I'm thinking of a Seeker relic. It's cost 1. I mean, playing it is fast, so this doesn't really save you that much money or anything. But Segment of Onyx is what I'm talking about. That happens to be a relic. So you could put 2 of those into play for investigating with basically Shroud 2 and draw 2 cards.
And they replace themselves.
So it sounds all right. I mean.
Yeah, I was trying to look at the list quick. The Forgotten Tome and the Ancient Stone are both pretty cheap, but most of the relics are kind of expensive for Seeker ones.
I always like it when they take a card that is like pretty bad, and they fix like they make it better on kind of like every dimension, and without making it like it goes up. It's 2 XP is like not that much, right? Compared to like sometimes they make something like level 4. So I kind of like that they put like a real strong effort into making this good, and I think it's like kind of a neat card now. I'm not sure if I'm gonna like put it in all my Seeker decks, but I'm sort of maybe excited to like try to find a deck that would want to play it now, which I wasn't before.
I mean, so the card that I was thinking about playing, or the deck that I was thinking about playing this in earlier was Ursula, because you can trigger this off of her free investigate, right? When you move somewhere, you can play this card, and then for fast, you can do whatever kind of secret BS that you want to throw.
You can also trigger it off of a card that we haven't discussed yet, that we'll discuss in a couple weeks, probably.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, symbols are great for Crystallizer of Dreams, although it doesn't trigger with Crystallizer of Dreams because Crystallizer of Dreams is a green card, and this specifies that it needs to be a yellow card.
Yeah, it is really too bad that I don't think you really want to play this for non-relics unless you have really. I mean, like there are secret decks that are really good at just having like 15 intellect when they investigate for like archaic glyphs or whatever, right? So this could be a way to like use that same high passing test power to like play stuff, but it's kind of messy. But being able to draw cards off of them is kind of cool. I don't know. Like I said, I still think this is like kind of a weird card that's kind of hard to find what deck it goes in, but it's at least the numbers on it are pretty good now.
I mean, it's a card that does a lot of stuff like a little bit better, which kind of always makes those ones weird, right? So it's like, oh, it helps you play stuff and draw cards and investigate a different thing. It's just a lot going on. So I think it makes it hard to fit into something. But if you do like a Relic Heavy Ursula or something, give it a try.
Yeah.
So let's look at the next card. So we got a level 3 scientific theory. So it's level 3, cost 0 asset, 2 intellect, 2 combat icons, talent, composure, fast, limit 1 composure in play. You get +1 intellect and +1 combat. Non-direct damage and horror must be assigned to scientific theory before it can be assigned to your investigator card. Free trigger, spend 1 resource. You get +1 intellect or +1 combat for the skill test. 1 health, 2 or 3 sanity on it. So this is the last of the upgraded composures. So just like all the other ones, it's cheaper, has more icons on it, and it gives a passive +1 to each stat, and has both health and sanity, one of which it has like something that can actually soak.
Yeah, right. I mean, super cool for combat, Amanda, right? Super cool for Joe Diamond.
Yeah,
he loves both of these stats.
Joe Diamond is really who I was thinking of because, well, I think you want to the ideal deck that would play this is you'd want to boost both your intellect and your combat. You would have some other reliable thing in your deck that can soak health or soak damage. You would have enough money to like activate it sometimes. And you can play level 3 secret cards. So yeah, Joe Diamond I think could definitely play it, especially if he has like Alice. Alice has 2 health, so she can soak a little bit, or Jeremy. You could do Jeremiah Kirby Joe, who has extra health. It's too bad Roland can't play it because that would be kind of cool.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that.
The Amanda thing is interesting. Maybe like Amanda.
I mean, even if she puts it under herself, right? She just gets like 2 combat stats, raw or intellect, which allows her to investigate on her off turns.
It's a fair point. I mean, I think if ideally you want to put like vicious blow or deduction or perception or overpower under Amanda when you're doing stuff. But like, yeah, this is something you can do.
With Amanda, you cycle a deck so fast that even if this gets trashed, you'll just play it in a turn or 2 again anyway.
That's also the thing, yeah. That's totally
and Joe
true.
Can't boast that, right?
Yeah.
I think you've talked me into it. I think like hybrid Amanda or combat Amanda, I definitely would play this.
Yeah, totally.
It's just you would definitely want to have. I feel like you wouldn't want just some random incidental damage to like immediately wipe it out. I mean, it's not that bad, but yeah, I mean, in Amanda, you're drawing so many cards, maybe you're just not even supposed to care if that happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems cool.
Yeah. Not much else to say about that, I guess. So let's move on to.
I feel like I definitely have to give that hybrid Amanda deck a try at some point. Next time we do like a 2-player game or something, maybe that's what I have to do.
You're gonna be combat Amanda.
Yeah, well, the hybrid Amanda. Yeah.
Oh boy. I mean, you could just play that in solo, Dan. Like.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough.
Yeah. Let's move on though to oh god, so much text. Archive of Conduits.
Strap yourselves in, folks.
This goddamn octopus man is just staring at me like, look at all these words you have to read. Okay, so this is the like there is now a researched keyword, which is different from research, right? Which is there's now like an official term for the like secret cards where you have to do you have to do some kind of like side quest, and then you can upgrade them into one of several choices of like a different card. So the level 0 version is Archive of Conduits, Seeker Asset, cost 2, level 0, 1 intellect icon. It's an item, atonement, occult.
Wild
Wild icon. Limit 1 per deck. As an additional cost to play this asset, place 1 resource on 4 different locations as ley lines. Reaction: after you successfully investigate a location with a ley line, exhaust this asset, move that ley line onto this asset. Then, if there are 4 ley lines on it, discard it, take its ley lines as resources, and record in your campaign log that you have identified the gateway. It takes up a hand slot. So you have to, when you play this, you have to mark 4 locations as ley lines, and then you basically have to investigate each of those locations successfully, and then you gain 4 resources, and you've like completed the quest, kind of, right?
Yeah. Like, that's a pretty mild quest compared to some of the other ones, because especially if you get down earlier in the game, it's like, oh, I just picked 4 locations I'm going to go get clues from anyway. It does exhaust, which is a little annoying, because that means you couldn't like get 2 of them off in one turn. But
but it doesn't. Okay, that's part of the cost, is exhausting it. Yeah, but even still, it's not that hard to do this. I think it's kind of like middle of the road, or maybe a little bit better compared to the other sort of researched things you have to do. Especially if you're somebody like if you're playing all these movement cards we've talked about, like Join the Caravan, or if you're Ursula or Monterey Jack or somebody, like, you're going to be able to do this. So then the upgraded versions, they're all. I'm just going to read one of them, and then I'm going to talk about what's different. So it cost 4, level 4, has 2 combat icons or some other symbol, plus a wild icon. It's a ritual, and it says researched, uses 4 ley lines, limit 1 per deck. It has... Okay, so this is where they're all basically different, right?
This is where there's a bunch of
it's different for each one.
Okay, but here's what they all have. They all have a fast trigger to move a ley line from this asset to some enemy or location or investigator, and then they have like an action you can do to do something involving those ley lines. So the combat one, Gateway to Tindalos, the fast trigger is move a ley line from this asset to a non-elite enemy, and the action is choose an investigator and an enemy with a ley line at a revealed location. That investigator moves to that location. You may remove the ley line to deal 1 damage to that enemy. So you can swap an investigator with an enemy at a revealed location, and if you remove the ley line, you can deal a damage to the enemy. The intellect one, the Gateway to Acheron, the fast trigger is you move a ley line to a revealed location, and the action is choose an investigator in a revealed location with a ley line. That investigator moves to that location. You may remove the ley line to have them take an investigate action. The agility one, Gateway to Aldebaran, fast trigger, move a ley line to a non-elite enemy. Action, choose an investigator engaged with an enemy with a ley line. That investigator disengages from that enemy and moves to a connecting location. You may remove the ley line to automatically evade that enemy. This action does not provoke attacks of opportunity. And the willpower one, Gateway to Paradise. My paradise is going to be not having to read these cards anymore. Fast trigger, move a ley line to an investigator, and action, choose an investigator with a ley line. That investigator draws 1 card and heals 1 damage or horror. You may remove the ley line to have them instead draw 2 cards and heal 2 damage or 2 horror.
Wow.
And
so
all the upgraded ones are also arcane slots.
Yeah, exactly. They take up an arcane slot. So
it's 4 to play. Interesting.
The kind of like common theme is that you basically like move someone through space to a place with a ley line, or like they already have a place with a ley line, although not all of them do that, because I guess the Gateway to Paradise doesn't.
They interact with enemies. Like, you have these 4 uses, and you put them on a location or an enemy or whatever, and you then have an action where you pick an investigator to interact with that in some way, right?
I'm honestly just inclined to say, like, these cost a lot of XP. They're probably fairly good, or at least some of them are, but like, it's just the mental energy to figure out what they do and to decide to put one of them in my deck is like, you know what, life is too short. I don't know.
I mean, I think they're cool. The ones that like move the investigator across the map could be pretty powerful.
Oh my God.
Like, a lot of these are like choose an investigator and move them somewhere. And we just talked about that with whatever card. Pen of the Queen, but also whatever card we talked about. Story of the Caravan. Or moving across the map is very powerful. Especially for big maps. There's rumors that Edge of the Earth has a bunch of real big maps. So, and even in Innsmouth, like
So
being able to move around
so
is pretty strong.
so like the gateway to Akron, the intellect one,
Mm.
you can like just play this, and then once you kind of get to the part at the end of the scenario where you need to race to the resign location, like once someone gets there and reveals it, or maybe it's already revealed when it comes into play, which happens a lot, you put a ley line there, and then you can like click 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 move 3 people there this turn or something, right? And if you're it's, I guess it's not a tome anymore, so you can't be Daisy and like get an extra action to use it, which is kind of too bad. But I mean that could be really powerful. It's just kind of situational, but it could be really good. The other one, like the ones that deal with enemies feel kind of like maybe
Okay.
they would be good in solo mode, because
Yeah.
maybe you could play this and it would be like a movement card that can also deal with enemies sometimes.
Yeah. I think that so a couple points here. The first one is that um, these aren't spells, which I was kind of upset about because knowledge is power to make these incredible. At least better than they are right now. But knowledge is power does not work on rituals, so that's really unfortunate. The second
Yeah.
thing, Comrade in chat, or Midas in chat rather, stated that this, I think the Archive of Conduits, the Gateway to Paradise, it can actually be used in Carolyn, and that Carolyn has this weird interaction with one of the other ones where if she takes that Shrewd Dealings card, or it's like it's
Shrewd
a yellow
analysis.
permanent.
Yeah.
She's only that's a good
the
point.
only option for her to upgrade into is this one. So if you take Archive of Conduits on Carolyn, and then you upgrade into this, you can get a free copy of it for 4 experience, right?
Well, not quite though, because unfortunately these are all limit 1 per deck. So you cannot get 2 copies of them, which is a big weakness on them.
It is pretty uncool, honestly, and it's also like, why? Like, it's not like these are so good that it would be bad to have 2 of them or something. You know what it probably was? They probably didn't want to print 2 copies of 4 of them for the investigator box.
That's exactly it.
Absolutely what it was. There's definitely 1 copy of each of these in
That's 1,000% what it is.
Look, we can't be printing eight of these or 10 of these if you include the original one.
I assume they didn't want to make it so, because you could play 1, and then if you played a second copy, you'd have 8 ley lines in play or something, and maybe that was probably way too good. But they didn't have room to put hex as like when this leaves play, remove the ley lines or something.
Because it's just like this would just be honestly pretty great for Carolyn. It still is, really, because
it still is, yeah.
The fact that it works on any space, you don't have to be at someone's location to use this on them. Like, okay, you get 4 ley lines, so you could just put a ley line on everybody, and then even if you don't use up the ley lines, whenever you want, you can spend an action to basically heal a horror off of somebody, give them a card and a resource because of Carolyn, which is pretty great.
Or with her signature, it's 2 horror, right?
Yeah, if she has that out, right? So like it's an excellent Carolyn card. It's just it really is too bad you can only have 1 of them.
Yeah.
It's also when we talk about the weaknesses, the fact that this can heal 1 damage or 1 horror, it's relatively rare to pick a card that gives you that much flexibility outside of like Guardian cards. So if this could be pretty good if you need to get rid of those weaknesses that we're going to talk about later.
Yeah, and in lower player counts with this, you can put multiple ley lines on 1 investigator, so that means you could easily use the second effect when you need to, right? There's no limit of 1 ley line per investigator.
Oh, so. Yeah. It's actually really funny that the gateway to Tindalos doesn't exhaust, so it looks like you could just like move 4 ley lines to an enemy and then do like the enemy turn around and then blow them up with by pulling the 4 enemy that have ley lines off of them at one point. I didn't realize that they didn't exhaust. You can just immediately distribute them to whoever or whatever you want.
Yeah.
That's kind of good.
But the action is only 1 per action to remove 1.
Yeah,
right. The limit 1 per deck thing is just really too bad. It's also, if you're playing Carolyn, it's also a good well prepared target, I guess. I don't know if Carolyn bothers to play that, but you could.
That's yeah.
Maybe
that's Colin Doc.
Yeah,
I don't know. that is what I was thinking of. So, I don't know. Let's we already spent so much time reading the stupid text on this. Let's move ahead.
The next card is another card that we spoiled. Profetie Profana. It's a unique level 5 seeker asset. I was going to say Ass of the Unknowable. Atlas of the Unknowable. It costs 4 to play. It has 2 wild icons on it. It is an item, a relic, and its own. and it says while you are not at the locus, you get +1 intellect and +1 agility, and you may ignore attacks of opportunity. And then as a reaction, after Professiae Profana enters play, choose a revealed location. That location is the locus until Professiae Profana leaves play. And then as an action, you can move any investigator to the locus, and it takes the hand slot. So this card, when we spelled it, we thought it was really good for like, obvious folks like Daisy, who could just kind of move anybody to the locus, and also the boosts are great. Ursula could even consider taking it just because the static boosts are fantastic, and also ignoring attacks of opportunity makes like absolutely no sense to put on a card anywhere. But for whatever reason, you could technically just take your turns with it with like 5 Swarm of Rats on you, and they would literally couldn't do anything until enemy phase, which is kind of weird and interesting. But yeah, really cool.
If you're a fan of not playing with the taboo list and you want to sleight of hand this out, that might be kind of fun too, right? Because you could like each time because you could like just choose where do you want the locus to be this turn, right?
Oh, that is kind of neat.
The other thing I was thinking is if there's not a lot of kind of like what you would call in Magic like blink effects in this game, where you get to kind of like blink your assets. But if we start to see any of those, like I know, so like Abigail Foreman, she can like move your books between your slots and her, but they don't leave play, so I don't think that would reset it. No. But if there's like kind of like a calling in favors kind of a thing for hand slots at some point, maybe that would be fun to like.
What's the library docent or something?
Yeah, that's why I mentioned it. Which one, Dane?
There's like a level 1 seeker ally who like when they come into play, they return a tome to your hand.
Oh yeah,
which is meant for recharging the Necronomicon, but like that's kind of
yeah, exactly. And it's also, I mean, yeah, it is a tome, so you can search for it. This would be, because it's a relic, it's like a pretty good thing to play the Unearth the Ancients on or something like it does have synergy with a lot of things. I feel like this is like not quite what you want to spend 5 XP on probably. Like even if you really wanted to move everybody around, just playing like the Archive of Conduits we just talked about is like maybe a better way to do that, because you don't have to like with this, unless you have some way to bounce it and like choose a new locus, you're kind of just like locked into picking one particular place right when you play it. But I don't know. I mean, it's definitely a powerful effect, right?
Yeah. I mean, the discussion is like, even if you're just using it for the first part, like the +1 agility and ignoring AOs, like is it worth the 4 money and 5 XP just for that part?
Because... and a hand slot, like,
yeah.
I mean, maybe like Monterey Jack, maybe, because I feel like maybe just being able to, like, if Monterey Jack is playing Knowledge is Power anyway, then maybe just being able to like instantly boop yourself somewhere and like definitely get a card and a money and like maybe do something. I don't know. But it is a hand slot, right? Like you could just play Magnifying Glass, right? That already gives you the intellect.
Yeah, so. If you're looking for more than just int, so it's the tax opportunity thing. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
Can Trish? Trish can't use this. So
it's a neat card. It's just like who is gonna want to pay 5 XP for it? I don't know, but it's not crazy to think about it.
Yeah, it also has there's some weird rule stuff on it. Like, what if you pick a location that like leaves play? Then does it turn off because there's no locus anymore, or is it just always on?
I think so. Like you now have a pointer that's been dereferenced. Like there's no you try to teleport there, it's like playing Axiom Verge. You just end up like in.
but you're also not at the locus.
You can just move all your friends to like Oblivion or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, if there's no locus, you're not at the locus. You still get the top part of it. So that's the thing. Like it's usually, if all you want is the passive stuff, it's pretty easy to just pick a location that you're never going to go to, and then you probably just get it all the time. So
yeah, that's actually really funny. Midas in chat also brought up Library Docent, and you definitely don't take the AOO for playing the Docent because you're playing it while this is out. So you can play the Docent to pull the Professiae Profana back to your hand for whatever reason you're wanting to do that for. Kind of neat.
To move the locus around. Yeah. All right. The only thing I remembered about this card is because we previewed it, is this was the answer to one of the trivia questions in the pub trivia, and I only remembered it because I was like, oh man, it's they're on a boat. The question was like, which book had been found at the ocean or something.
Oh,
Which
that's
is why you
right.
see the ocean out the window. In
Because
the art.
everybody, when we were kind of like teasing the card, everybody was like, "Oh, it's totally the sextant. It's the sextant for Silas that does stuff." And then it was definitely not that.
Well, I think this appears in in some story, because the question was something about like, oh, what did so and so find in the ocean? Which book? And I was like, it's this, because there's water in it and a sextant.
Oh, Abigail.
Yeah, Abigail. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, that marks the end of the colored cards, right? There were the mono-colored cards for the set.
There's
So,
still a lot more colors. It's the end of the color cards for this podcast though. So let's jump into the neutral cards. We got 5 of them. First one up. The first one is In the Thick of It, Dane. This is a permanent, no cost, neutral asset, level 0. It is a curse, permanent, limit 1 per deck, purchase at deck creation. When you purchase In the Thick of It, suffer 2 total physical and or mental trauma, then earn 3 experience. So we've already, some of us already built decks using In the Thick of It, and have some strong opinions on it. I'm pretty sure Dane hates it and Dan loves it. Is that correct?
That's the opposite of what this dealio is.
I don't hate it.
When I saw this card, I was just like, oh, look, a card that's going to go in every single deck that I ever make for the rest of time. And so far, that has not panned out. But I will still stand by, like, if you are a person who is just going to put this in every single deck, I would not blame you. I would be like, you know what, do it, because this card is absolutely absurd to have printed. But absurd in a good way, because I think that it opens a lot of really interesting avenues for investigators who really need specific cards to flourish on their first, like, scenario or something like that. And if you're playing in a harder difficulty, it might be reasonable to get this to, like, just specifically get some stuff that'll help you stay alive or help you, like, synergize with another investigator in a specific way. It just opens up a lot of really cool options. Don't talk to me about versatile, but it really just, like, opens up a lot of interesting options for investigators on their first time going out.
Yeah, it is nice, especially for the new Edge of the Earth investigators who have the kind of weird deck building where they only have like 5 cards for their kind of like off class spot at level 0. Having this from the beginning can make your upgrade path kind of neater. And yeah, who doesn't love getting extra XP at the beginning of a campaign, right? So I mean, all of that is certainly true. I think there's a lot of decks where you definitely should not take this. I think if you're playing like Mark or Daniela, you should not take this. I don't know, maybe Daniela, maybe, but like basically, if you are gonna use your health or sanity as a resource, probably you shouldn't take this card. Or at least you should like think really hard. Like if you're Agnes, you should think like, do I want to take this or Arcane Research? Because like Arcane Research is probably better than this to take 2 of those. And I definitely don't want to take both because I don't want to start with like 4 sanity or whatever remaining, right?
But what if you're Carolyn and you want to immediately heal all that sanity?
Yeah, no, it's fair.
The thing. If you have a Carolyn in your group, and you can play this on Carolyn, immediately have 2 horror to heal. If you know that there's going to be a Carolyn in your group who's going to be sucking up all your horror anyways, it's just going to be like, I mean, I might as well, right? Like just throw 2 horror on me, dog.
I think if you are Carolyn, this is like a no-brainer. If you're not Carolyn, you're really gambling that Carolyn is going to like find her horror healing stuff before she finds her weakness and be able to like get to you and heal your horror before you just draw Rotting Remains and die. So
I mean, that's if you're like Joe.
That's if you're like Roland or somebody. Yeah. So I would still be cautious even if you have Carolyn in your group. But yeah, that does kind of push you towards taking it.
Yeah, and also like I did take this in Winnie in our Innsmouth run, and that's just because all of the starter deck investigators have ridiculous amounts of health and sanity. Like they just have more than usual, so like kind of knocking them down 1-in-1 is actually kind of fine because now they're just down to normal investigator stats, and you also get the bonus of having like boxing gloves on or upgraded boxing gloves on that or whatever.
Yeah, I think investigators that have less card options in their deck building tend to have higher stats at the front of their card. So
yeah, it's also if you're playing friggin' Calvin, I mean, sure, go ahead and take it, right? Like, you're obviously going to take this.
There we go. Not the person I expected to bring it up, but there we go.
It's always there, looming over us, the Calvin conundrum, Yeah.
My rule of thumb is like if that 3 experience is going to give you a net gain on like your ability to complete the scenario faster, such that you would not take, it makes up for taking that extra damage in horror each scenario, then it's worth picking up. But if it doesn't actually net gain you like that 3 experience isn't enough to net gain you like a whole round or something, or help you avoid taking extra damage in horror, then it's not worth it.
Yeah, if you're going to need to if you're going to ever need to put cards in your deck to heal yourself or protect yourself that you wouldn't have otherwise had to play because you took this trauma, that probably means you shouldn't have taken it. It's only if you can kind of get a free ride. Like if you're playing standard in some campaign where you just don't take a lot of damage or horror, then yeah, sure. Or like Dane said, if you're playing an investigator that already has high base health and sanity, then great, 3 free XP. But just be careful, because if you're somebody that has, if you're Mark who has only 5 sanity and really wants to take a lot of damage, effectively has 5 and 5, don't take this.
Also, the dumb goofy thing to do with this is to get it at the beginning and then use it to get versatile right away, and then use versatile to get the other permanents that affect your deck building to mess everything up.
That's so gross.
So the reason, okay, there is one kind of important interaction that I'm still unclear on, because I don't think it was defined at the time that I used it, but I made about 8 decks with Rabbit Hole, down the rabbit hole, and this card.
That card is awful, Dane.
Because for the express purpose of I wanted to test out alternatives to Arcane Research, because down the rabbit hole is kind of ostensibly the another path that you can go down while also being able to take.
It's a worse version of Arcane Research.
And the whole reason for that is because Mystics just upgrade cards a lot. There are not a lot of cards that you upgrade into that aren't already in your deck. There are some, but for the most part, you can make a pretty fine Mystic deck that will be able to benefit from this. The exception of this being, there are the new spell cards that just came out are a good example of this. Like Brand of Cthulhu, where the lowest level version is level 1. My thinking was that you can take into the thick of it, get those 2 Brands of Cthulhu or whatever spells that you want to get that out of the way, so you're not paying the penalty later for down the rabbit hole. My understanding was that this does work with Rabbit Hole, because why would they print it in the same set, etc. But there's some weird specific wording of Rabbit Hole plus this that might make that not the case, is what Ben maybe was indicating.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I had an argument for both how you saw it, where you could use this to dodge the Rabbit Hole cost, and also that you couldn't do it. I think I ended up leaning more towards it could help you dodge it, but also that's an insane combination of cards. So why would you do that to yourself? Yeah, I'm not sure.
Ben, Ben, let me tell you why. Because Mateo already starts with 5 experience. This puts him at 8 experience.
I think that if we each sort of have the one card that people in our group wish we would just stop playing already all the time, it's got to be for Ben, I would nominate Let God Sort Them Out. For Dane, I would nominate Rabbit Hole. For me, I would guess it's basically everything in that Mandy deck that I played.
It's really suspended.
I feel like you guys would probably love it if it would practice makes perfect a little bit less too. But
any secret card.
I love practice.
Yeah. But yeah, Dane literally sent us a dozen decks with Rabbit Hole in them, and it's just man, Rabbit Hole is terrible. Of all the cards to backflip over whatever trying to make it work correctly, I just don't. I don't know.
That card's gonna be central to all of my skateboard tricks.
I saw a fun Zoe deck on ArcadeDB that had Rabbit Hole and the green permanent, I think, and so she had one of a bunch of stuff, and there was 20 things she could upgrade in the deck or something. Still
sounds like shit, Ben. Sounds terrible.
This is what I'm talking about.
Let's move on.
It's just it's a fun thought.
Continue talking about this even more. So the next card that we've got is Heavy Furs, which is a neutral asset, cost 2, level 0 with a combat icon. It's an item and armor, and it says reaction. After you reveal a non-auto-fail symbol on a chaos token during a skill test you are performing, deal 1 damage to Heavy Furs. Cancel that chaos token and return it to the bag. Reveal a new chaos token. It has 2 health, no sanity, and it takes up the body slots. Dane played this in his Winifred deck in our recent Innsmouth run. Was it? Dane, it seemed like you were getting some value out of this with the Lonnie combo. would you ever play this if you didn't have Lonnie in your deck?
No, probably not. I mean, so here's the thing. It was printed in this set for a reason. I'm not going to get into the campaign spoilers because that would make Ben's ears bleed. But there is some interesting interactions with this as it pertains specifically to rogues, because rogues like to succeed by a lot. And theoretically, you could if you draw -4 and that would make you not succeed by 2 or something like that, you can replace it. Again, that could just auto-fail you. But, there's ways that you can do cool things with it. But, the fact that you can use this with Lonnie is kind of neat, because you can kind of assign it damage if there's a low priority test or something like that. Or if you draw a curse token and you don't really want to go down that rabbit hole, you can draw another thing. It wasn't as exciting as I thought it would be, and I think that's just kind of by the nature of the card. It's not supposed to be super, super strong, but it is cool, and it kind of allows you to do weird pseudo mystic type stuff, right? Because you're technically drawing a token, and that doesn't feel like something that other classes should be able to do. So that's kind of neat.
I mean, I find it funny because this is kind of close to Windy's ability, right? Except it doesn't work on auto fails.
Yeah, it's like the lucky
but the
dice,
art
right?
pictures like a very old man. So it's a good contrast. No, I mean, if you're gonna on hard mode, there's definitely tokens that are kind of bad to draw. That aren't necessarily. Sometimes they make you auto fail in certain conditions, or sometimes they have some other bad effect that applies. So maybe on hard mode, if you are worried about dealing with those tokens and you don't want to seal them or something, it could be good to have it in there.
Yeah, like hard mode, often by the end of the scenario, the skull is up to a -8 or something, right?
And they add more chaos tokens, right?
Yeah, so I think on hard mode, there's maybe an argument that it would be useful for that reason if you can afford it, and if you aren't using. I mean, there's not a whole lot of great body slot items in the game, honestly, so it's not like there's a lot of competition. On standard, the fact that you can't cancel an auto fail basically means that that ability does nothing for the most part. Because usually there's not any token that's so bad you have to cancel it even if you'd pass. And usually, if it's a test you really care about, you can probably get to the point where only the auto fail will actually wreck you. So on standard, I wouldn't play it for its ability, but you know what? It is a 2-cost body slot thing that takes up that soaks health. Which, if you're not in colors that can play leather coat or leather jacket, maybe that's. I mean, you have other options, right? Even Mystics, you can play the robes, or there's the trench coat even, which costs 1 more, I think.
Yeah.
But if you're really desperate for something to soak health but without spending any XP, maybe it might fit in a deck.
It's also kind of neat for Yorick, because he can replay it from the bin.
That's true.
Kind of
Yeah. I feel like he's gonna have trouble having enough money to keep replaying this. He really wants free things like the leather coat.
That is also true. I also for Bob, if you just have 2 of these in your deck, and it's thematically cool for Edge of the Earth, right? When you're going to the Edge of the campaign, if you got a Bob, play two heavy first, so you can dish out some hot heavy.
You guys didn't bring a coat? Well, what do you know?
Well,
I got a deal for you.
Well, yeah, and it's also with Bob, it's 50% off, right? Because doesn't he make everything 1 cheaper? No, if he has his signature out, it's 1 cheaper. But he could have a Mr. Whatever's catalog out to pay for stuff. I mean, it is cool. When we talked about Bob, we said you would need a bunch of items that are kind of generically good that anybody can use.
Yeah.
This isn't gonna blow anyone's socks off. It's not incredible, but it's it is pretty generally. It's sort of useful for everybody, kind of, and most people are not going to have a body slot that's oh, sorry, I can't take this because I'm already playing Armor of Ardennes or something, right?
Totally.
Robes of Endless Night,
Yeah. I mean, I also think the one last thing to point to for this card is that this card art should be making Ben pretty happy, right? Because this might be accurate art of Ben's long lost grandfather who combated the bears at one point and just has murdered many bears and is now wearing their corpses.
Dane, that's not possible.
I don't know. I don't know about this. Let's move on. We only got a few cards left. Let's kind of power through this.
It's the best card in the set, folks. It's here. It's Sled Dog. This card costs 3 to play. It's a level 0 neutral asset. Commits for 1 combat for whatever reason. And it is an ally and a creature. You may include up to 4 copies. Take it 4. That's a lot of consistency right there. Of Sled Dog in your deck. Up to 2 Sled Dog cards can take up a single ally slot. And then as an action, you can exhaust X Sled Dogs to move X times. And then as a separate action, you can exhaust X Sled Dogs to fight. You get X plus X combat for this attack. Instead of the standard damage, this attack deals X damage. It has 2 health, 2 sanity, and it takes up your ally slot.
This would be more fun if it was Sled Cats, and you could get like you could be like Ben and his girlfriend, and you could get like 8 of them, and then they would just like each one you get, it would like make it worse, like it would make your life harder.
We have 2 cats. That's a very strict limit. The previous location had like 8 cats. Anyway, people are really excited about this card, but it seems not very good. You have to play 2 of them for it to start being efficient, right? And
costs a lot. Pretty expensive.
Even if you want to play 4 of them to do like a super big move or super big attack, that's a second ally slot because it's only 2 dogs per slot.
I'm wondering, is there an investigator in this game that has like inherently there's like, you know, another ally slot somehow, and maybe can play it cheaper at the beginning of the turn?
Larry can play it, but even then, it's still like 2. Like he's got other stuff that he wants to put in ally slots that aren't.
No, like Larry's not playing any other allies. He's just going for these dogs. Like,
well, so here's the thing: he's already playing guard dogs. Why
he?
not have even more dogs?
Because at some point that would become unmanageable. I don't know. I mean, the next card we're going to talk about also makes dogs, heckin' puppers cost less.
Yeah.
So like that's obviously the deck that Dane wants to do with this.
Yeah. I guess like if you use the next card, and Larry, so that it costs you only 1 to play each dog, and you have extra ally slots because you have mid shout or whatever, then you can get all 4 dogs out. Once you have all 4 dogs out, like once per turn, you do an action that does 4 damage, or you can move across the board.
Like it's a lot of
not
moves.
Even once per turn. You have Inspiring Presence to ready your dogs.
Oh, okay. We're playing Inspiring Presence now. Okay. Okay. So
he already has a dog. These are more dogs.
This is like a lot of hoops to jump through to have like a lightning gun that can also be like a 3rd tier seeker movement card.
I mean, Inspiring Presence only will exhaust 1 dog, so it doesn't really help you too much.
That's a good point, yeah.
Because you have to exhaust all of the dogs at once to get the big boost. Folks in chat are very pro this, Dane, so I guess...
Dane, if you hypothetically, if you had to rate these dogs, say on a scale from 1 to 10, what would you rate these dogs?
I mean, every dog is a 10, right? Except for maybe Chihuahuas. But like,
I feel like the scale should be normalized so the average dog is like a 5. I kind of feel like that's the whole point of rating things out of 10.
Spoken like a true cat lover. But I mean,
or just someone that understands math. It's like either one of those things. You know?
This is realistically speaking, this is a fine ally. It's like nothing to. It does cool things that no other ally does. Basically, is why you play it. And we're going to talk about another card in a second that makes it also way cooler.
I could see doing it in Larry, and especially if you know you're going to have like really giant maps that you need to be able to run across constantly. I just don't know about anyone else can justify like
you got to get through your whole deck. You got to find and play like 3 of these at least, or it just sucks. It's just
absolute
thing you say
garbage. That because there's a neutral card that allows you to search your deck for a copy of another card that you already have down.
Doesn't
it's
that
a level 2 event?
Doesn't that cost 2 and it like is level 2? Cost 1, level 2.
What is the name of the card?
Oh man,
I don't.
It's a spell. It's a neutral spell. It has a woman walking up a spiral staircase.
I know what Dane's talking about. It was in Dream Eaters because it was with like the myriad like dream enhancing serum type stuff. I don't know, man. I mean, this is like a very janky deck that I think a lot of people will enjoy. So that's cool. Like I'm happy that they're doing that with it. I kind of feel like maybe instead of printing 4 goddamn sled dogs, maybe they could have printed an extra copies of those conduits, maybe. But you know what do I know? I'm just a grouch. I'm just a big old grumpus.
Just a secret player.
Yeah, I'm just a cat person. What do I know?
To be fair, I'm also a cat person. But Dane, like when I think of Edge of the Earth, I think of giant penguins and sled dogs. Those are the 2 prerequisites.
If there was a penguin ally, I would be a lot more excited about that.
Oh, they're not going to be your ally.
Dane, they could be. Dane, is there anything else you'd like to say about this card before we move along?
I'm
Lucid
excited to
dreaming.
play it.
That's the card you're talking about.
Yeah, you can play a dog and then lucidly dream about another dog that's an exact copy of the dog that you already have out to get your other dog out. And if you're a rogue, you can double that to get a second dog off of that. I'm just saying.
You certainly could.
Now,
here's what I want to happen with this card. I want Dane to play his big fancy sled dogs deck with forced learning, and I want him to like turn 1 draw 2 copies of sled dogs. You have to choose which one to discard, and then turn 2 draw the other 2 copies. I think that would be very funny.
Wow.
Why do you wish misery upon me, Dad?
That's so harsh. All right. So
moving on.
So the next card is a Rod of Animalism. It is a level 1 neutral asset, cost 2 with 1 willpower icon. Item and a relic. Hey, it's a relic. You have 2 additional ally slots, which can only be used to hold creature assets. Reaction: when you play a creature asset during your turn, reduce the asset's cost by 1, and it takes up an accessory slot. So
One's got to be playing a lot of creatures to get some value out of this, huh?
You know, what I thought about this card was like, I wonder if I could have fit it into my Daniela deck and kept my guard dogs, so that I could have done nonsense with the guard dogs to have them bite people and proc 2 damage. That was my thought on it.
It's really hard to find a deck that wouldn't rather have some other accessory slot other than this.
Literally anything else.
Except Dane's ridiculous sled dogs deck, basically.
You can, in the thick of it, get one of these and a lucid dreaming. And 4 sled dogs.
I mean, Larry can get an insane amount of soak from all his allies, so, you know, he doesn't care as much about the trauma. So you could do that, I guess. Is there anyone other than Larry that you care about?
Comrade Sim solved it. Okay. You play this in Mandy. When you calling in favors, you trade your 1 sled dogs for 2 sled dogs.
Right. Yep.
That's like buy 1 get 1 free.
But Dane, Mandy has access to Pendant the Queen.
Well, and then you also play you That's a really good point, Ben.
I would like that card to go nowhere near sled dogs.
Well, you'd play aura shards. So each time a dog enters the field, you get to destroy an artifact or enchantment, right? So it's, you know, you balance it with calling in favors. You're blowing up their soul ring, whatever. You know, it's all.
Are going too long, and like our minds are just devolving into Mad Pupper Lovers 47. Anyway, Rod of Animalism.
Yeah, I mean, if you're using sled dogs, seems worth grabbing if you're trying to do sled dogs. Maybe in Larry. What are there other creatures? There's guard dogs. What else is a creature?
There's cats.
There's Miss Doyle and the cats.
Patrice can notably play as many cats as anybody, I guess, and you can do that. You can do Cat Mom Patrice also with it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So maybe if you lean hard into the creature, then yeah.
Obviously, whichever one of those decks you play first is going to really, really choose your alignment between Jeremy and MJ, because one of them is definitely a cat mom, the other one is definitely a dog dad. So, you know, you've been warned.
Yeah, there are a lot of dogs in this set, and you know, Jeremy did help design it. Are there any cats? Were there any cats so far?
No. I mean, I think Dream Eaters was like the cat set, and this is the dog set.
Yeah,
I guess that's fair.
All right, so yeah, let's move on to the last neutral card. So this is a Call for Backup. It's a neutral event, cost 1, level 2, with a wild icon. It's a favor and a synergy, and it says, 1 at a time, in any order, if you control a rogue card, you may move to a connecting location. Guardian card, deal 1 damage to an enemy at your location. Seeker card, discover 1 clue at your location. Mystic card, heal 1 horror from any card. And Survivor card, heal 1 damage from any card. Before we discuss this mechanically, Ben, I have a little question for you, not a rules question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how annoyed are you that the effects on this card are not listed in the standard class order?
Oh, God. Damn it.
I didn't even realize that. Is there any reason?
I feel like that's got to be at least like a 7. Even, you know, I'm pretty sure the reason is that was the way that the text would fit in the frame.
Oh, sure.
Maybe,
okay,
yeah, because they had to curve the text.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess
it does
that's
say
fine.
in any order, so it doesn't really matter. But
why did they list them in that order?
I honestly think more than the order, I think just having a bulleted list where they're not like left justified horizontally or like left aligned looks really bad to me. But
It looks weird.
They
Yeah.
could have listed them in class order, and it still would have fit in the frame. I think.
it's not
Ugh.
you know one thing I think they don't really
It's
do
not
in
even
this game
alphabetical.
is in Magic they just like scale the size of the text, so you get some cards where the text is so
Oh, sure,
tiny
yeah.
you like need a magnifying glass.
Or
It's kind of good that they don't do
Yeah,
that.
that's not allowed.
I agree. I agree.
Imagine if MJ was allowed to do that and knew about how to change the size of text.
So let's
It's very
try to
dangerous.
let's try to ask the basic question, like roughly how many of these things do you need to be able to do for this to be like worth playing?
I think like maybe a better question is which one of these are the best ones to get resolved, right? Like which one of these are the most impactful, most versatile? Like which class basically would you want to have this most easily access the ability?
The first three of these things are basically like automatically the first one is literally just like spend an action to move somewhere instead of playing this card.
Right.
And then the Guardian and Seeker ones are basically like automatically succeed at a basic investigate or fight test, right?
Yeah.
And then the last two are like bonus healing rider kind of.
I mean, yeah, this one's kind of tough. I feel like you like maybe in solo when you want to be able to do most of this stuff, that's good. Although if you this provokes an AOO, right? So
It does.
The damage
I was
one
about
is
to say that.
sad.
Yeah.
Right. Unless you're trying to ping an aloof enemy, in which case,
Yeah,
you know, sure.
Or, this might be maybe Carolyn because you're gonna control most of the stuff.
I was gonna say that. You're gonna have.
Suppose you're Trish. Trish, like you're gonna have a Seeker card maybe. It's hard to have a Guardian card, but it could be cool to like move to a location with an enemy and clues at it, and then deal a damage to that enemy, and then get a clue and trigger Trish and either evade it or get another clue.
Notably, because this is one at a time, you could play this on a location that doesn't have an enemy. You know, trigger the rogue thing to move, and then the Guardian thing to do damage, or then trigger your pick up a clue or not. So that's kind of fun.
It could also be like, maybe like maybe Roland. Roland's probably not gonna have a survivor card, but Roland could like move someplace, steal a. I don't know. This one's really tough. I think that if you're playing like Synergy Carolyn, you get the horror healing from it. Like maybe that's cool. If you're playing like Arcane Research.
You know what's interesting? I just noticed most cards that heal damage or horror say that it's from an ally or an investigator.
Yeah,
it's just as any card. So that's like Sister Mary has her one thing, right? Her signature asset that's really hard to heal unless you have one specific card. This card actually can do that. I don't know how relevant that is.
Yeah, I mean, like Solemn Vow, I think can also, but that's only for horror, not damage. It's also the weaknesses that we're about to talk about right after this. If you're in a class that kind of has a hard time healing damage or horror, this might be one of your only options, and it is like maybe it does other stuff as well, so it's not like you're totally just sacrificing a card slot to only get rid of your weakness.
Yeah.
I feel like you need to be able to trigger at least 3 of these for this to be worth 2 experience in a card in your deck.
Yeah, I think that's going to happen most of the time in like 4-player, right? Because there's going to be people around you or on you with enemies on them. Maybe there's going to be somebody with damage and or horror on them at some point. Like maybe that's the best case scenario is like Carolyn with 3 other investigators. She's safeguarding with them anyways, etc. Like,
the way I keep trying to make it work is like Joe Diamond or Roland with an Enchanted Blade, like a level 0 one that they don't upgrade for some reason, even though upgrading it is great. Well, I guess Joe can't upgrade to the good one. No. So like Joe with an Enchanted Blade, maybe like Joe with like Enchanted Blade and Eon Chart or something like that could be okay.
There's also those there's triple colored assets out that kind of are like mini economy. I played one in Winnie, which was crafty, which was kind of neat, and those give a lot of access for these.
I keep forgetting that those exist, but they do.
Yeah, I haven't thought too much about them yet, but I kind of thought it would be neat in Winnie, that one specific one. But anyway, I thought for me, the biggest use case for this was I feel like the Rogue and the Seeker one just have the most obvious synergy and are kind of universally the best because they're proactive. So maybe if you have like a Trish deck that has a double in it, you could call for backup and double it, and then you get like 2 clues and could move to 2 locations in any order, which is kind of neat.
Yeah, maybe. I I like the art here. I'm kind of annoyed that there's only 4 people in it and not 5.
I was like,
Yeah.
Isn't there like a bird? Oh, that's a car turn. I thought there was like a weird bird behind.
Yeah, I was really looking for like, is there like a hidden, 5th person here or something? Like, oh, someone is in the form of a bug or whatever, but like I don't see it. I guess it's cards, right? So maybe like 4 of these are allies, but then like Jenny's holding the gun. That's maybe like a guardian item or something. I don't know.
Is that Jenny or?
I don't think so. I don't think these are all investigators.
I don't think any of these are investigators. This gave me like Doom Patrol vibes though, because it's like all a bunch of weirdos, which a bunch of
that's actually pretty funny.
Weirdos.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Minus in the chat brought up a really weird interaction that folks were wondering about. So there are sometimes, like for example, in Carcosa, in the first scenario, where the theater fills up with like blood or ooze or whatever,
Right.
and those are denoted by damage or horror tokens.
Oh.
These can't actually do that. These can't actually remove those. That's not intended. That's not like a thing. It's not that intuitive, but some people might be cheeky about it.
Yeah, there's sometimes that they reuse tokens to represent other things other than they actually normally are. So
those are not damage or horror. Those are just using those tokens.
Yeah. Because the MJ previously wasn't allowed to just print new tokens in every campaign. I don't know if they'll do that as much now, because now it seems like they're allowed to just do that with the new model, even in Innsmouth, right? So, all right.
Yeah.
So I think that's it for player cards tonight. We got the basic weaknesses. We want to look at those real quick.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, and they're all like kind of similar. So maybe.
Yeah,
waiting for an extremely loud motorcycle to go by. So yeah, they're all basically similar. So maybe we can kind of talk about them together.
Yeah, I'll just go over them. So we got arm injury, leg injury, panic, and stupor. For arm injury, all of them, they get put into your threat area when you draw them. For the arm injury and leg injury, they can be healed as if they were 1 point of damage on you. If it's healed, discard it. For panic and stupor, they can be healed as if you have 1 point of horror on you. If it's healed, discard it. So you have to have some way to heal to get rid of these cards. And then they all have a forced effect that is similar. For arm injury, it's after you take a fight or activate action. You cannot take any of those types of actions for the remainder of your turn. That's very bad. Leg injury is after you move, resign, or evade. You cannot take any of those types of actions for the remainder of the turn. Panic is after you play, engage, or resource action. You can't take any of them for the remainder of the turn. And stupor is after you parlay, draw, or investigate action. You cannot take any of those types of actions for the remainder of the turn. My first note was it's very funny that on leg injury, one of the 3 things is a resign action. So in my head it was like, oh, wait a second. Does that imply that there's some way you could resign and still be in the game? Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, these are kind of rough, right? Like these, if you get one of these basic weakness, that like immediately encourages you to, as soon as possible, upgrade into something that lets you heal.
I mean, I think depending on which one you get and what your deck is like, there's some combinations where this really might not be very bad at all. Like for instance, if you're playing a guardian and you get stupor, you're not going to investigate probably. There's some scenarios where you might want to parley, but a lot of times you're busy fighting and that's other people's job.
Mm-hmm.
And draw, like how many times do you really want to just spend your whole turn drawing? Like sure, maybe sometimes you do that, but not that often.
Yeah.
But there's other combinations where it could be really bad to get this.
I mean,
and where you would have to like alter your deck to try to put in healing stuff to get rid of it.
Stupor is definitely the least scary one, I think, for all of these. But like panic, if you play, makes you only play 1 card a turn, or get
one
money.
non-fast card, right?
Yeah,
just one card,
but everyone except like Seekers, most of their cards aren't fast in.
But that's the other thing I was going to say is like panic honestly would be pretty fine for Seekers who are going to rarely play cards, right?
Oh, do fast cards not actually count for the panic?
Right, they're not actions.
Oh, that's fine. I had panic in my Ursula deck, and I was thinking that like I could only either play the magnifying glass or crack the case, and if that were the case, it would actually be kind of annoying. But like panic was totally fine.
No.
I think arm injury and leg injury are actually the worst ones because like imagine having like a Monterey Jack that just has a leg injury somewhere in his deck all the time. That would be so miserable to deal with.
I mean, once you get your 2 Pathfinders,
so
you know,
The arm injury was the worst one, I think, in general, because activate actions,
Yeah.
any arrow action, right? So that
Yes.
if you
Well-
have assets that do actions, you can only do it once per turn. If your investigator ability
Especially for
has an action
Guardian.
on it, I mean, it's
I
bad
mean,
for
but-
Guardian, but it's bad for other people too.
But again, no. I mean, I think arm injury is terrible for anyone who's fighting with weapons.
Mhm.
But if
Or
you're
spells.
like, well, but suppose you're like Nathaniel, you probably don't care about it, right? Or if you're basically any seeker, like maybe you want to activate archaic glyphs, but you can just do that with knowledge's power. You don't actually have to like, spend an action. Like I think there's definitely a fair number of investigators that don't care about arm injury. There's definitely a fair amount that don't care about stupor. I think leg injury is weirdly maybe the scariest one because
It is,
like
yeah.
there's enough scenarios where you have to like make a break for the end and resign at the end,
Mhm.
where like this makes that very difficult.
Yeah.
And if you draw this at the wrong time, it could be like everyone else is like racing to get out this turn, and you're like, oh crap, I need to find some way to heal a point of damage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Um,
And the other thing is that like rogues specifically do not have any damage heal as far as I know. Like innately. They have horror heal in the form of liquid curd, so you can just kind of adaptable that in if you need to. But
Right.
like as far as like arm injury or leg injury, that it's actually kind of worse for them, I think, generally, because of that fact. And just like not taking actions for an arm injury is like weirdly the worst for like mystics and guardians. And guardians
Yeah.
make sense because they're like wielding weapons, but like mystics, like they're like waving their arms around, I guess, so they can't use their spells as efficiently.
even for guardians, if you're playing shriveling and azure flame, it's bad. If you're playing like rite of seeking and whatever, a lot of times you tend to like use that once per turn anyway, so it might not be the worst thing. I mean, it's still going to be annoying, but like it's also. Do you remember the mystic card we just talked about a few weeks ago? That's like heal 1 damage and horror for each synergy thing you have, or something like that.
Meditative trance, I think.
And I think we were pretty down on it, or at least I was. And it's obviously not a great card, but that's an example of the kind of card that you like have to kind of suck it up and put in your deck if you get one of these.
Mhm.
Like
I
it's
agree.
a card that's not great, but it's like a fairly easy, simple way to just heal 1 point of whatever and get rid of this. So if you are a mystic and you're like, oh man, I got arm injury and now I can't shrivel guys as reliably, it's like, well, okay, I probably just have to put in a couple copies of that, you know.
Yeah. Even like panic and stupor are fine for them because they've got like fearless, but there's no like fearless for damage. So
The other thing about these that's annoying is you really do need very specifically healing. A lot of times, like you mitigate damage and horror by playing disposable things like Leathercoat and Teddy Bear,
Mhm.
or regenerative allies like Jess and Peter, or maybe you even rely on something like Solemn Vow, where like you're moving it onto Peter or somebody else's Peter. But in this case, like none of those do anything. You actually need to like heal a point of damage or horror off of you.
Yeah.
Guardians can do that, right?
Yep.
Hallowed Mirror, they've got a whole ton of stuff for all
Man.
that case.
So
Yeah, I mean,
mystics can
Hallowed
do
Mirror.
both. Yeah.
Yeah. Survivors have like the book that can heal horror and adds bless tokens. Do they have much else?
No, you're thinking of the Guardians.
That's a Guardian. I thought there was a Survivor one.
Well, they have a book that if you fail by at least 2, you get to heal a horror.
There's something in Stella that lets
Maybe
you
you're
heal
thinking of that,
somehow.
man.
Yeah, that's probably what I was thinking of. Yeah.
I think
Grimm's
like
Fairy Tales.
I think these just could be nastier in solo if you're playing someone that one of these
Yes.
screws up your day. In solo, you typically do probably want to do multiple different types of actions a turn. It might not be the same set on these, but just having to spend a card in your deck probably to heal it in a later scenario and drawing it the wrong time, it could be pretty brutal. I think in multiplayer, I think you're right. There's somebody in your group can probably heal you if needed, and you might draw, if you don't get one that's the one that cripples you completely, like arm injury on a guardian, then you can probably play around it for a couple turns if needed.
And we have seen that like the Archive of Conduits, the Paradise version, like if somebody has that, that's a great way to deal with these because it can heal either one from anywhere.
Yeah.
There's not too many other ways to heal this that don't involve like going onto someone's space, which could be annoying. But there's enough cards in the game now that heal damage or horror. It's like probably someone in your group can have some.
Yeah. I mean, all in all, I think that I do like these being added as basic weaknesses because I was like kind of wondering the direction that they'd go in after the fantastic Dream Eaters ones. I can't even remember. Oh, the Innsmouth ones were the curse token ones. But like, yeah, like it's really hard to like add, like there's just so many weaknesses that are all like pretty similar now. So like it's really hard to get that like, okay, what are we doing with these? Okay, these actually do something very different, and they actually kind of pose like, well, maybe I need to switch into some healing.
I like them. They feel like they could have been like in the core set, except that maybe there weren't quite enough healing cards back then. Like they feel simple, but they're kind of interesting, and that you can play around them, which is what we usually like. And I mean, yeah, they can really screw you over depending on which one you get in your deck and whether you're solo or whatever. But I feel like the average case on these is like, it's maybe like an average basic weakness. Like it's going to be annoying sometimes, but you can play around it, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I mean, that's it for the cards today, right? We finally got through them all. Psych. There's
Now,
2 more episodes of cards
yeah,
reviews.
we still have all of the many multicolor cards to talk about.
Yeah.
But as far as now goes, that's it for cards today. Tomorrow, Dan and I are going to be playing through Return to the Circle and Done at 6:30 EDT. We did this cool
Friday, because people listen to us on the podcast. It'll be
that is
today.
true. You won't know. You have no idea what time or day it is. If it's after the apocalypse, there's just no recorded time anymore. So, we're going to be using the campaign tarot reading Destiny. It's already been pretty fun. So we'd love for you to join and hang out with us tomorrow, Friday. And so if you have any other feedback or questions for us, email at comments@mur.fm, and we'll read your message on a future episode. If you want to stay current with what we're working on, follow us on social networks, including Instagram, Twitch, or join our Discord server. You can find all our links at social.mur.fm. And if you really enjoy what we do and want to get more involved, you can become one of our patrons at patreon.com/Miskatonic University Radio, or just leave us a nice review on your favorite podcasting network. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today, and thanks to the folks who are listening in the future. Take care, everybody, and be well.
Bye.
See you next time.
Bye.